Doesn't look like we have anything on the agenda in terms of approval of minutes from the last meeting. So we'll start with introductions. Board member check-in.
So with that, Mark, I'll just say that we've got a couple board members that need to be reappointed, and Daniel Brown, he expired on February 28th. Alan Swank, his end date was April 16th. And just for future reference.
Has he been notified?
I just heard that. I guess I go eat dinner.
So my thought is to notify them, and if they would like to be reappointed, had a conversation with the mayor today, and I can provide that information to the mayor, and he'll send out a new appointment letter.
Okay.
And for future reference, Travis, did I say June 19th?
You didn't say, but I think that's the timeline. So
yeah, we're not letting you go.
So is there any action or anything we need to do in this meeting for this, or?
No, just some sort of confirmation from each of those board members would be nice, either via email that I can forward on to the mayor.
Okay.
And I'd love to have everybody serve once again.
Sounds
I feel
good.
like we've got a really good group.
Very good. Old business, COVID-19 continued closure list.
So with that, I think I went through what we were closing down and was closed in our last meeting. What continued, I thought I'd update on that, and what continues to be closed that impacts our department, recreation centers. But I want to expound on that a little bit, in that just found out yesterday that fitness centers and gyms can open, gyms as in weight rooms, cardio rooms, can open under the gym guidelines. There was some confusion, and I got clarity on that from the executive director from the Ohio Recreation and Parks Association. So with that said, we can open our fitness center, our track, and start to phase those openings. As you know, at the recreation center, we've got the senior center on one end, though that remains to be closed. That will be one of the last, I think, sectors to be opened. I've been meeting with the seniors. Their staff is back in the building, back in the office. We meet once a week to just discuss the status of what's happening with our department, as well as any information they have that they want to share. So my plan, and staff and I have been working to on a phased plan for reopening. The first will be the fitness center, the track. We are provisionally putting things in place, schedules, sanitizing, all the best practices that are required and recommended on the responsible restart. All of that is contingent on being able to get equipment, signage, and sanitation products. So we've got the ball rolling. I served on that task force at the state level, so I had a feeling that was, I could kind of gauge that timeline. So we started to move on that and put our plan in place. Any questions about that?
Are the operating hours impacted by your ability to keep up with all of the guidelines?
So that we don't know yet, but provisionally what we're putting in place is a new schedule for the recreation center that includes a shutdown of 1 hour from noon to 1, and then that reopening will be for seniors, that 1 to 2, for Silver Sneakers, our Silver Sneakers participants. We are going to close on Sunday. We had a data analytics, and we could actually see where when the center was used the least, and so we tried to base our hours and those closures on that data.
Hey, Terry, there's a question in the chat. They want to know about the tennis and pickleball outside courts and when those will be open. Or does that include those?
Outside courts are still on the continued closure list. Park amenities, open space in parks is open. Park amenities, courts, basketball courts, tennis courts, shelter houses, those types of things are still on the closed list. We will phase in court use in the gymnasium inside the recreation center, likely for pickleball. That is something that is outlined in the guidelines under the gymnasium openings. Thanks, Shauna. So things that still remain closed: playgrounds, other park amenities as mentioned. Let's see what else. Senior centers, I mentioned that. I think that's it. Day camps, but those can reopen on May 21st. And I'll talk more about that. Well, actually, I can segue into that, into the reopenings, if you'd like.
Terry, one question about the senior center. Is that because of the vulnerability of that demographic that those are still being kept closed?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay.
And something that we're discussing is the provisions that we're putting in place, the health and safety provisions, as outlined. We don't know what's going to be mandated for senior centers, and how we're trying now to determine how we'll manage that. So it may be that any patron that enters that part of the building may be required to wear a mask. We are recommending, it's a recommendation that participants wear a mask. All staff will be required to wear a mask. We'll do temperature checks for staff. We'll do a verbal screening at the front desk. One of the things that I didn't mention as far as things that we need to get in place are plexiglass, what they call sneeze barriers at the front desk. So we're working on that. We did manage to get plexiglass. It's hard to get right now. So.
Terry, there was a question. Can we play outdoor pickleball? It's more socially distant than indoors.
Once we get a lift to open park amenities, that is definitely something that we'll consider and begin to reopening. As we reopen in these things, I just want to point out that the high touch areas and frequency for sanitization is going to impact our park staff. And we're provisionally trying to put things in place with getting equipment like e-misters that can sanitize playground equipment or all of our cardio and fitness equipment. One of the pieces of equipment we're looking at can sanitize. It's a backpack type sanitizer that can sanitize like 54,000 square feet. So we feel like we've got a good lead on those, 30 to 45 days, but we've already ordered that equipment and those products.
Is that the amenities, I assume, applies to the skate park opening as well?
Skate park is open. Skate park and dog parks are open. We did not close those. Some agencies did, and some agencies left them open. We left those open, and we're monitoring those areas. There is information and signage about social distancing.
Okay.
And then you're still going to apply.
I'm sorry?
I think that was just background noise.
Okay.
Okay, moving on to new business. Terry, the recommendation for the 2020 pool season.
So I sent that out to the advisory board today. I made my recommendation to the mayor and his team that we not open the pool this season. I looked at it countless ways to try and determine how we might be able to do it. The direction from city administration in the most recent weeks is that it would have to be done revenue neutral. And I think even in our last meeting, I shared that we'd be looking at a minimum with the capacity and some of the other restrictions as far as programming, that we'd be looking at a $90,000 to $100,000 loss. So that recommendation moved forward, had the support of the health department, discussed it at length. I mean, it is a high risk category as far as opening, but even if we could and did feel like we could open safely, we just could not do it in a fiscally responsible way. Tough decision. I mean, really tough decision. There were some agencies, other municipalities that made that decision early on. And once the governor lifted, the order and allowed pools to open, of course, they got the pushback that they did it too soon. We held out thinking that there may be some way we could do it, but 75% of the pools across the state are closed. That's an increase of 25% since the numbers May 13th. Been on a number of calls with directors across the state and the Ohio Recreation and Parks Association, national calls, Red Cross, and bottom line is, from a fiscally responsible standpoint, it just didn't make sense. And then in a high risk safety category, that weighed in as well. So I think the mayor, he's announcing it in some of his circles today. I think he may have had some meetings, and he's got a press conference tomorrow, and he'll announce that. Any questions on the information I sent you, the numbers or anything?
Looks like we're good.
All right.
I had one question. Terry, do you know the Nelsonville Pool? Are they following the same suit, or have you heard anything about that?
I heard that they are considering. I know the mayor meets with locally and regionally with different mayors, and there's been conversations about who's opening and who's not. But I did hear that they were going to try and open.
Okay.
Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure.
Okay. Thanks.
Does anybody know if Strauss Run, the beach, is going to be open on Memorial Day and going forward?
I don't have any information on that.
Okay.
Okay, COVID-19 reopening. with some bullets of summer camp and the community center phase 1 reopening.
Yeah, I spoke about the phase 1 reopening. We're going to, as soon as we know that we have the equipment, signage, and all the things installed, modifications, as soon as we get a good date on those things, we'll set a date to reopen. So that's a date to be determined. And we'll share that publicly as soon as we know it. I have staff meetings on Wednesday, so I hope to have that in place next Wednesday. That's my goal. But everybody's doing what they can behind the scenes to make sure that we have the things. We've already started moving equipment, spacing the cardio equipment, and just laying the building out logistically. There's some pretty stringent requirements as far as how we set the building up and things that we can offer. We will not be able to permit people to drink from water fountains. There won't be showers available. We encourage the public to come dressed, not bring belongings. We are ordering 25 sanitation stations, no-touch sanitation stations for the building to be located, around the fitness center, around the track, and in each area. So there's a lot that goes into it, but we're up for it. We're learning a lot each day, and I'm hopeful that we can announce that pretty soon, as early as next Wednesday, on a date that we'll reopen. I'll move on to summer camp. We had postponed summer camp to July 6th. We're moving forward with that and feel like we'll have everything in place. That camp will be operated at 50% capacity. That's 30 to 36 children, I believe, each week. It'll be a 4-week camp. We are making modifications to offer a number of things outdoors. So we feel good about that we can at least offer that for 4 weeks, barring nothing changes in the short term.
Terry, I had a question for that.
Yeah.
So with this, will it be a first come, first serve, or for the camp you're thinking, or? We
had registrants that had already registered, participants that had already registered. Some of those registered participants have requested refunds, knowing that there's going to be modifications. So we'll fill those slots as we get requests, and as we haven't opened that up. I think there was actually a waiting list, but we'll fill those slots accordingly. And camp's going to it's going to be different for all of us. It's going to be different for, typically that's where kids connect, and that's where they connect with camp counselors and, all sorts of fun activities that are designed around team building. And so it's going to have a different look. And it'll be different for all of us. But, again, we are engaging with other camp directors to try and put the best program we can in place.
All right. Move on to Sandlot.
So we signed a memorandum of understanding back in March with Sandlot, and we're full circle again. They have requested with the recent governor's orders to allow softball and baseball, non-contact team sport. Sandlot's requested to host a 5-week season. Those dates, let's see, would be, I think, starting June 11th and, hang on, I got them. Starting June 13th through July 11th. With that said, I've been in conversation with two of the board members, Todd Zorn, the president of Sandlot, and talking through what that season might look like. I've had conversations with the health department about what would be required. Reviewed the baseball and softball responsible restart guidelines, and I've requested a COVID plan to be added to the agreement. With that said, as I mentioned, I don't have maintenance staff that can sanitize restrooms every 2 hours as would be required, sanitize dugouts. I don't even know that I have maintenance staff to mow. Well, I know I don't, to mow as frequently as we typically would, and as is outlined in the MOU. So I have to put those revisions in to the MOU, as well as the addendum that includes the COVID plan. So with that said, while I'm agreeable to try and work through something for a 5-week season, I have some hesitation around the maintenance responsibilities and support that we can provide. And I recently have seen posts for Sandlot with a start date of May 26th for evaluations. I don't think it's feasible that we can have those evaluation days. Our fields are currently closed. And I recently saw a post of a tournament announced for July 3rd and 5th. I don't have any information on that. I haven't had the opportunity to follow up today on that, but like I said, I've been in conversation with at least one of the board members since Monday, back and forth since Monday. So they have provided a draft COVID plan to the health department. I recently got a copy of it and have been reviewing it. So we'll work with them on that. Again, it's got to be both plans, what we're requiring and what the state's requiring. There has to be an element of compliance there. In conversation with the health department, I've expressed that we can't enforce compliance. I don't have the staff, nor is that something that we should do. I don't have park rangers. It's a small department. So it would be up to Sandlot to enforce that compliance. Players, coaches, umpires, the health department has agreed to work with monitoring it, and just supports our position. So I guess what I'm really looking for from the advisory board is advice as far as what other things you might like to see in addition to a COVID plan from from Sandlot and their compliance plan. I've asked for some pretty detailed things as far as just strategically how they would go about sanitizing dugout areas and setting up sanitizing station, at each field, sanitizing restrooms, those types of things. So that's what I've requested. I don't necessarily have that yet. I'm willing to work with them to get to that point. They've asked for my recommendations. I know the health department is reviewing it as well. There wouldn't, the health department has said no concessions, which is, that's across the board statewide, as far as what I'm hearing from other agencies. And I know that tournaments are a concern. The mayor and I have discussed that, and would likely not permit tournaments from any teams outside the area. And then, with tournaments, there'd have to be, if it was a interleague tournament, we'd have to see what that plan looked like as well. So it's open for discussion. Again, I want to see kids play baseball and softball, but I want to make sure that they're doing it safely. And I need a good working agreement with Sandlot to ensure that part of my conversation with the board president was that the only way we're going to be able to do it is to do it together. And I feel like we've got two options. As we open park amenities, fields are one of the things that we can open once that's lifted. So we could potentially open fields so they could play a 5-week season. Any comments or thoughts?
Terry, I know you don't have the staff. You don't have the staff to police it necessarily, but is there anything in there around the accountability if something were to be found or observed that they weren't abiding by it? Is there anything in there?
That's something I'm working on, adding those types of things to the memorandum of understanding. But as far as the responsible restart, no, there's not anything. That is the type of thing that I'm adding to the agreement in the addendum. And it would be, I really want to have the things in place so it can work. Yeah, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is, they start up and then are shut down because either we've got some type of exposure or case, and or there's the non-compliance, and the health department shuts them down. And that would be the order of it. We'd make that request to the health department if there was non-compliance. So again, I want to put things in there that help them, and so so they can have a successful program for 5 weeks. The tricky part, and I'll just put this out there, is a social distancing with spectators. I would not want that job to have to manage or monitor that.
Yeah, well, you want to put things in there to help them, but also to protect you.
Good point, Travis. Yeah.
It's where does the liability fall if there's an outbreak or,
So in the information they provided, they do have a waiver, a COVID waiver, and all of this will be submitted for review and approval to city administration, safety services director, mayor, law director, and the health department. With the health department being the final authority on the COVID plan, as well as looking at the information that we put in the addendum as it relates to the COVID plan.
Terry, one of the things that you mentioned, one of the things that you mentioned was, I believe you said a May 26th date, which is next Tuesday. I don't see how that can possibly happen. Tomorrow is Friday. You've indicated at least 4 individuals or organizations that need to review this. One, to Travis's point, would be the law director. And even though there may be a waiver in there, we all know and we have all signed waivers that really aren't worth the paper they're written on in this litigious era that we live in. But we have the law director, we have the county health director, we have chief of police from both an enforcement standpoint, but also the other hat that he wears, the service safety director. We have you and this board, and then we have Sandlot. And there's no way, with tomorrow being Friday and Monday being a national holiday, that this can be done so that those fields can be used on Tuesday. When I saw this on the agenda, I went to the Sandlot website, and lo and behold, there are 3 things posted on there. And like everybody else, I want the kids to play ball. I think back to the 8 or 9 years I played. Boy, did I look forward to that every summer. Got me out of the house, and this virus, everybody wants out of the house. But there were 3 things on there. One was the COVID-19, this responsible restart for baseball and softball that we've all read now. But there was an announcement on there that tryouts start the 26th of May. And the second thing that was on there was that there is a tournament on 4th of July weekend. And those 2 really concern me, particularly the 4th of July. And this goes to the social distancing. We've all seen pictures in the paper from Columbus. We all saw some pictures from around here last Friday and Saturday night, what was going on in the bars and stuff. Just because on the 26th we can get back on the fields if they are ready and we are ready, doesn't mean the gates of the dam opened all the way and all the water can run through like it used to. So I think there's a lot of things that need to be put in place. And quite honestly, we certainly don't want to tell them how to run their league. It's been very successful for many, many years. But are evaluations all that necessary? Evaluations really are just for the incoming people. Most of the other kids in Sandlot have played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So my concerns are, one, I don't see how we can possibly start this on the 26th. And secondly, that tournament, we just can't have people coming in here from all over the place who may not be following the rules in our community that they're used to following in their community.
So, Alan, great points. And to answer you as far as the May 26th date and the July 4th date, I've sent an email to the board president and asked that he share that with all board members, that all dates are on hold. So this is the second email I've sent with regard to that. And they know that I can't commit and did not commit to a May 26th date. When I was having a conversation early on in the week, the May 26th and through the 29th dates weren't even mentioned. So I did not have those on my radar in an agreement to consideration to the 5-week season. I was actually told that there would be no tournaments, so was rather surprised. And I get their updates on my email, and was rather surprised when I found out. I think it was yesterday, it may have been today, about the July 4th tournament. So I've addressed that in an email, and actually also made them aware that the fields are closed to any evaluations, practices, or games until we have an agreement COVID plan with the MOU executed and signed in place. When it was first presented and looking at the June 13th date, that felt doable, and with the exception of, or with knowing that we wouldn't have any tournament dates. So I felt like that was workable. It was far enough out that could probably work through that. The other point I want to make is with the governor's announcements, and I don't know if I had an opportunity, this may have been after our last meeting, but with the governor's announcements, and what I was getting from the State Recreation Association, we expected that, I got off of a call on Wednesday, and we expected that there would be an announcement of charter fishing opening, campgrounds. There was one other thing. When the governor made the announcement, they went through a list of recreation-related activities that impacted agencies, and from team sports to swimming pools to. So there was a lot of information out there, and when the public hears open, and there's a date given, that's what they hear. Not knowing, everything that goes with that. So sometimes I think, just because we can and it's allowable doesn't mean we necessarily should. But I'm willing, and I think you all know this. I'm willing to work with any organization to especially youth organizations. To provide services to kids in the community. As I said, with the conditions and requirement to put kids on the field safely, and having that COVID plan and working through the other details is necessary to do that. I referenced the senior center, and part of that conversation is as you're moving through this, I'll need to have a COVID plan. That is something I want in place with every organization that we provide services or facilities for moving forward through this COVID era. So,
Mark,
go ahead.
Mark, quick question if I could. Earlier, somebody asked about the Nelsonville Pool. I think you may have. Is the Nelsonville Pool going to be open? I know your specialty there is campus recreation, but I know you talk to the folks in intercollegiate athletics also. What is the status of all of the university fields? Not that I'm lobbying to get them open, but just for consistency's sake, so that we can, might be able to reference. OU's fields are closed, campus rec fields are closed. Is that something you could shed some light on?
Well, all of our stuff is closed right now, obviously. I think there's probably a little bit different context because it's in a university setting, and it's probably the decisions are coming from a university setting as opposed to just a fitness center or even the municipal status. So I don't know if it's a perfect comparison. And the way the university is right now, we're still, anybody that can work from home needs to work from home. And I think until we go away from that type of setting, we will probably not be opening our facilities. But we're still very much up in the air trying to figure out kind of how that's all going to look moving forward.
Yeah. I saw today that Ohio State is in the same boat, and they're projecting July the 6th. To allow and I hate to call somebody non-essential, but what they call non-essential employees, back in the office, so to speak. I guess what I'm getting at, you're right, it's not an apples for apples comparison, but it's not, out of the realm of, these are both governmental agencies, whether it's a university or a city, and other governmental agencies in the area, facilities aren't being used. And Athens City Schools fields are closed down to June 30th also. So we're kind of that. And again, like Terry, let's get the kids back on the field, but they need to do it in a very safe way for everybody, and particularly for the fans. We can't have bleachers full of people yelling and screaming for kids hitting their first hit in their entire life. And that's just not safe.
And that setting's going to look different as well. We will likely move the bleachers. Water fountains will be inoperable. There are measures in place where there's no congregating, and there's a process that will have, and who can engage family members only together. And, I don't even begin to know how you manage that. But, I feel like there's two options here. And one is to not open the fields until we start opening playgrounds and such, and other park amenities, which I don't think is necessarily the best option. But I need to know when facilities are open that there's a means to provide the sanitization and cleaning that needs to happen, whether it be a dugout, whether it be restrooms. With that, the option is to open fields and put those conditions in place. Again, I do not have the staff to support that right now. So it will be necessary that those things are agreed to in the agreement. And back to your point, Alan, is it won't happen before May 26th, but I'm hopeful that and with the board's advice, because I am looking for advice. Your advisory here is that we can get something in place so they can start a 5-week season June 13th.
Do you need a recommendation from us, Terry, or is that what you're asking for?
Well, there's been a lot of good conversation, and I'd love a recommendation from the board on this.
Terry, I have a question, because I know there's the social distancing, so there is no cap for spectators or people in that area, correct? Is that the current guidelines as far as gathering? Okay.
There is none. I can tell you what the formula is for our facility and for the pool area, because I've had a lot of practice in the last couple of weeks. But it's when we start to reintroduce classes in the exercise studio, it's going to be 4x6 area or 100 square feet. For some reason, it worked out differently for the pool deck at 113 feet. But I haven't even looked at West State to know how that may break down. I do know that it's specific as far as what they'll need to do as far as players facing in the dugout, and what some of those restrictions are as far as the engagement with the umpire, other players, parent-child at the dugout, and those sort of things. That's in the responsible restart, but no capacity.
I guess
that's been left up to the state and local levels. I want to say that that was presented as such because every facility is different. Every ballpark's different. So they've left it up to the folks that oversee and run those areas to figure out what their capacity is with those guidelines of the social distancing at 6 feet and with some of those formulas.
Yeah, I mean, I guess just for me, I'm just wondering, maybe if there's a discussion between the two groups and maybe having a cap or something, and then they enforce that, because you could have a situation where, I'm with everybody else as far as, making sure everyone's following the guidelines, but, the people will do what they're going to do. And, will Sandlot be at fault? Or if we cause an outbreak, will the city of Athens, will be at fault because we allowed this to happen, and so I'm just wondering about, getting that many people together. There's already a lot down there, maybe having that discussion and seeing if we can have that in advance, because, families can be together, but then non-families aren't, 6 feet, and it gets different. But what does that look like if everyone's there at once, and maybe Sandlot knowing that in advance, in my opinion, I feel like Sandlot probably put the 26th date in July out there, just hoping. With me and Brew Week, I just put something out hoping. It's easier for me to cancel it than it is to start something week out, so I wouldn't take them as, hey, we're just going to do this no matter what. Because, they got to move that train. But that's my biggest concern is, what is the penalty if certain things aren't adhered to. And there's two parts. I mean, there's Sandlot doing their job, but then the people not doing their job. How does that look, and where is that? You know, I mean, they could have the best plans ever, but if certain people don't want to wear masks or, you know, socially distance, was their response strong enough? Is that how we look at it? You know, that's where I think that's the only difference this year than any other year. You know, I feel Sandlot's probably prepared to do all this stuff. And I'm sure they're going to take a hit, you know, and having concessions and all that stuff. So that's a scary thing, you know, not having this and, you know, not having, you know, water containers and stuff like that and water fountains. You know, there's a much bigger cost, but that's where I really worry and want to make sure we're, you know, because if this discussion happened here, you know, because some baseball thing is going to have some bad happen, I feel like, somewhere, and I don't want it to be us. And I feel like if we can prepare Sandlot the best way, they can know, hey, we're within our guidelines. Because, you know, what I heard up in Columbus with that bar that got in trouble, the Standard Hall, they said they were doing everything right, and then they called the health department, and then they got in trouble, you know. And so I don't want that to be a situation with our Sandlot where they feel like they did everything right, but they're still getting shut down or something like that, you know. And I feel like it's just going to be spectators and, you know, controlling that. You know, if we just say, hey, you need to control them, you'll get shut down. Maybe there's a discussion of what it looks like, and then maybe it's not just, hey, you're shut down for the year. Maybe you lose 2 years or something. I don't know. It needs to be more than, hey, stop playing baseball. You know, it needs to be a severe thing that, you know, they really take. And I don't want to make it sound like Sandlot's not going to do that, but it needs to be something real, which I think you're already doing. But I just want to reiterate that, you know, I just feel like that's super important, because as a guy who does large gatherings, you know, it's people don't want to do what what they're told, you know. And I just see this thing where we're all doing the right thing, but we create something bad out of, you know, no one's malice, if that makes sense.
So, to your point, Brandon, part of the conversation has been wanting to know how they're getting information out to players, coaches, parents. What type of training are they going to have? I know when people come back to this facility, I've got one staff person working on employee training, and then messaging and signage, and those sort of things for how we get that information of what's going to be required to you know, for the public. So, you know, that's been part of the conversation. The other part of the conversation with the board president is, you know, again, to put all these things in place, start the league, you know, buy these uniforms, make that investment, and then if it's non-compliance, it is Sandlot's responsibility. And you know, the recommendation, if it's non-compliance, will be to call in the health department and shut it down. And then the other question is, you know, if there's a positive exposure or a case, should there be language in the MOU that, you know, just states that that's the end of the season, so to speak. And I will, again, I'm in conversation with the health department. Some of the liability questions I'm posing to the law director. But no, great points, you know, and the capacity thing, I think is huge. But, you know, does the city regulate that? And you know, and I've been given the direction by the mayor that, you know, we know what the state guidelines are, but if we feel like we need to go above and beyond, go above and beyond. And that's at any facility, at any park, any of our programming. If we need to do that, we can do that. So great point. And I'll definitely probably be awake at 3:30 thinking about it. Because that's
You're welcome.
So back to the question I asked Terry, I guess, speaking for myself, I'd like to see the kids play this summer. If Sandlot can address the things, the additions to the MOU that Terry has crafted that she referenced earlier, and we get sign off from the appropriate entities, at the time and place designated by those groups. I'd say give it a shot. And believe me, I'm as cautious as anybody. I've been in 3 stores since May 17th. That's it. Because in another month, I'm in that vulnerable population. But I'd like to see the kids play. But it's got to be controlled. And I guess I have faith in Terry and her conversations with those entities, the health department, the law director, the police chief, and the mayor, the administration, to craft a plan that allows kids to play, but does it in a safe and responsible way. And, the NBA shut down real quickly when a couple players got it. And that may be one of the things here. If a player or two gets it, then this thing gets shut down yesterday.
So with that said, I'd like to get you the draft MOU just for any final review and comment as I get it out to city administration, or maybe even before, to just let you take a look at it. And if there's any comment, just email me those comments or recommendations, because there's a lot of moving parts here with this, and we've not done this before, not just Sandlot, but opening facilities and thinking about other things like programs and classes. And again, that involve, our youth in the community as well as other populations, to include seniors. So our conversations are going to continue to be interesting in our rec board meetings, and I have a feeling that it's going to center around this for the most part as we phase in different things and we learn more. So,
Yeah, I think I agree with Al. Everything he just said. I think the one challenge is that when you actually start thinking about all of these guidelines and everything that's incorporated, there's a lot of different situations and nuances that come up in the details. So maybe even in those discussions around the MOU is how are you going to respond to a situation or things that are not following the guidelines that you're set forth. Yeah, we're going to say we're going to do all of these things, but is there a process or an established way of responding to situations that are not in compliance with what's been laid out? Do they have the staff or the personnel to be able to do that? Who's going to do it, and how is that going to be addressed? So I think there's just so many, whether it's spectators or the participants, in game, during game, all that type of stuff. I just when you actually get into the details, there's a lot there. So. But with that said, I agree with Alan. As long as that can be worked out and people are taking the precautions and doing things the best way, then try to make it happen.
And to your point, Mark, that's been the conversation I've had with the health department in reviewing the COVID plan that's been presented. We shall, but not how. So we're going to have to get into the details of what that looks like and how they're going to do it. And again, who's responsible for that and how they're doing those things. So we're starting to, we're looking at that already with the COVID, with the draft that they've presented. And that's going to be some of the recommendations going back to them as we send back for revisions and inclusions of certain things.
Sounds good. All right. We're ready to move on to other items and department updates.
So some of this I've done just in conversation thus far. I've alluded to the fact that, we've got some personnel issues. We are currently not hiring or filling positions. That still includes the 3 positions at Arts West. We've got some things that are moving around with maintenance. Our head landscaper has taken a custodial position uptown, and we've got a part-time person that will be filling a full-time custodial position here at the community center. Custodial positions are key right now with the sanitization requirements and higher frequency of cleaning. So that leaves us 2 short, and we have no seasonal staff. Got the okay to hire 4 seasonal staff who will support Kevin in those 2 open positions. Both of those positions, head landscaper and part-time position, are assigned to uptown. So landscaping and other assigned duties uptown. So seasonal will fill those positions. Let's see. Facility operations manager position, that Chief Pyle was moving that forward. I don't have an answer on that yet. I had let him know that if we didn't open the pool, that I didn't need that position until January. As we start to reopen things and with the timing of that, the chief has recommended that we go ahead and fill that position because we are short in a number of other areas. That's it with personnel. Parks, I outlined what was still closed. Projects, on a positive, we have ordered the swing set equipment, and that will be installed at West State Street. That park was in dire need of a swing set. We had a community group that wanted to do a community build. We felt like we could go ahead and purchase that with the auditor's blessing to purchase that out of 273 funds, which is new levy money. Get that installed as a bright, shiny new piece of equipment in our parks. So,
Terry, when do you anticipate that being installed? And playground equipment's still closed, right?
yes. So I don't know. I don't know when it ships. It hasn't shipped to date. And if you recall, that was part of my conversation in our last meeting, was wanting to move forward with projects that we could move forward with, but trying to justify, because now is a good time to install those things with everything closed, but trying to justify installing playground equipment when we're still not allowing kids to play on it. So, but I don't know. I don't know when it'll arrive, what the shipping lead time was. On another note, the program specialist submitted a COVID OPRA grant and received $1,000, and kudos for the Athens Rock photo submittals. What it is a virtual program. They've got rocks with Athens Rock spelled out, different letters in different areas. So it encourages folks to get out in the park and find these rocks and submit photos back to the department. So that was a plus this last month, and something they did a great job with. So there's actually an article in the A News recently. Other than that, I think that's it. Any questions, departmental questions on?
I missed the first part. But how are you doing, Terry? With everything, it's a lot. So.
It's a lot. I'm good, and I'm learning a lot. I'm learning a lot about myself, and it's hard to make decisions on closing programs or facilities when this is what really is in our DNA to do, to provide services and programs to the community. And this should be our busy time. This should be really when things start jumping off and we have an adrenaline rush and we're bringing staff on and creating new recreators, and we get to see people from the community that we haven't seen since last summer. That part's really tough. But I think being in these directors' calls each week and knowing, I mean, literally, we are all in it together, and knowing that our experience and our challenges aren't any different than are happening, statewide and all over the country. I think I've really gotten to know my staff through all this. We've been laughing a lot and we've been sharing more because we've had to slow down and start to think differently. So those are good takeaways. But thanks for asking. It's a different time, especially in our field. So.
Good question, Brandon.
I did have one other question, and this is not whatever you answer. I'm not going to take to the group, but I'm just curious: where does ultimate frisbee fall as far as likened to another sport? Is it like as far as it being allowed to play, because it's not a contact sport, but it a contact sport? And I just was wondering if maybe you or Mark, if you guys have heard anything about that, because I have a group of people who are asking, when can we start playing? And we haven't heard anything from the parent organization, but I just didn't know where that falls. Is it soccer? Is it football? Or is that in the same thing, lacrosse? Or, because, baseball's happening right now and stuff like that. I just didn't know if you guys, it's kind of that offshoot sport, but I just didn't know if you guys had an opinion on that, or, like I said, I'm not going to take this. I talked to the director and they said, it's going to be this. So when you hear this, it's reopening. I'm just curious if I could, because I've never really knew the answer to that. So
I don't know. We are streaming live, aren't we?
Yeah, that's what it is going out there. So there's Brandon asked this and said, when soccer says yes, frisbee can go. That's not what I'm asking. I just didn't know, in you guys' opinion, what your thoughts are. Because I've been trying to like it and be like, well, it's soccer, but it's really football. But maybe it's kind of like basketball because you defend. And I'm like, they all can't be right, or maybe they're all in the same bucket. I don't know. So.
Here's my thought, and then I'll let Mark take it from there. Regardless of where it is, I know soccer is considered contact sport. Mm-hmm. So I would liken it to soccer. Mm-hmm. But I think regardless of where it is, there's going to be those social distancing practices and guidelines that will change the way you play. Mm-hmm. As we move through this. So I think, to kind of be ahead of that, maybe look at it to see, okay, how can you change? How can we put in rule modifications that may help with that? The other thing is the high touch with the frisbee, and what I'm seeing, with baseball is that they've got to change that ball out, the frequency of when and how they change out a new ball. So I don't know how that would impact frisbee. Yeah.
In a bad way. That's good. That's helpful. It's bad news.
Just
I
something to think about. Think about those things. Reinvent the game.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I appreciate that. So,
could it be played with gloves?
Yeah. And
then you discard your gloves and have a sanitation station there. But the distancing piece, I'm not sure.
I got you. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions for the good of the order?
Real quick, next month, 18th, 5:30. So we're all on the same page for our calendars. Is that correct?
That's correct, and I apologize for the mishap with the 2 p.m. Sometimes I fail to give, with this new format, to give Scott and Ryan the information. We know our meetings are at 5:30 the third week, but I failed to let them know that. So they just went with the information they had when we sent that over. So yes, 5:30 on the 18th.
Sounds good. Is there a motion to adjourn? I'll motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all. Good to see you.